common pitfalls in child arrangements is what I want to deal with today. It's, as I said, it's quite a broad area, but I thought it'd be something that more people can relate to and more people will be openly talking about over coffee with you than potentially divorce, which some people can be quite shy about, especially because it involves their finances. So, just an introduction about who we are first of all. Brindley Twist Tafft James have been going for over 250 years. I think they're probably one of the oldest firms in Coventry. We deal with all areas of civil law. We're probably best known for our clinical negligence department and commercial department. We've got 3 people in our department. There's Mr. Hawley, who's been going for over 35 years. There's me, who I originally qualified. There's my colleague, Rebecca, the department, who also qualified at the bar, which means that if you need something taken to court, we are, well, and David, are very experienced at taking those matters to court, putting your case across well, and saving you money, because you don't pay for a stranger, a barrister, to take over you at court. Although we would still be in the background, a barrister would have to come in pretty last minute and learn the details of your case in order to be your mouthpiece. We can do that for you, and we can save you that expense. But let's get to the main points of difficulty. First of all, with child cases, there's 2 things which are really key in child disputes. One, it's the wishes and feelings of the children, and second of all, it's their welfare. Their welfare is the most important thing, and we always deal with the welfare checklist, which is at section 1.3 of the Children Act 1989. And first of all, it talks about their wishes and feelings, about their physical, emotional and educational needs, the likely effect on them of any change in the circumstances, what's their age, sex, background and any characteristics, any harm which they've suffered or are at risk of suffering, and how capable are the parents at looking after those children. That's summarising the welfare checklist, but that's always in the back of our minds. Annoyingly, every case is different, it's up for debate, it's very, very subjective, so you've always got arguments that can be made with the other side, and it can always get into a heated discussion. But what we pride ourselves on is making sure that you are the most important person as the client. There's nothing more important than your children. We want to make sure that we get that across at court and we give you the best possible service, always bearing in mind the welfare checklist for that particular child, because every child is different. Everyone's got different needs, and I'll talk about that as I go through every category in more detail with you. But the first common pitfall I want to discuss is parental responsibility. A lot of people at the moment are coming to me, particularly fathers, who are saying, Mum's kicked me out of Christmas contact, she's ignoring me, she's just made an application for the school without me, or she's taken them on holiday without my say-so. Fathers have rights, and I act for a lot more fathers than I do mothers. And it really annoys me when women can, and I'm saying it as a woman obviously, can take over and think, I'm a primary carer, I have got all the control. No, you don't. If the father, if they're unmarried, but he was on the birth certificate and is parent of that child, after 2003 he has parental responsibility. He has rights to decide on any change of surnames, schools, religion. And he has a right to know if you're taking that child away for any period of time. Now, unless there's a residence order in place where it says the child is to live with mum, unless there is that in place, you must tell the other person if you're taking them abroad. I'll talk about that in a bit more detail, but those are the kind of things that parental responsibility control. So when do fathers have parental responsibility? When you're married to the mother of the child, if you're on the birth certificate, or if there's a parental responsibility agreement in place, or a parental responsibility order. Now, the parental responsibility agreement means that you might not necessarily have been on the birth certificate, but the mother is allowing you to have parental rights for certain reasons. You're having more contact recently and you need to have a bit of a say in their upbringing. And that is when you'll agree, we can draft that agreement for you, you both sign it, and that is saying you've got parental rights. That would go to the school, the GP, and anywhere else that person would need to know that you've got parental rights. And you'll probably take it along with you to the airport as well. And you'll know why when I get onto holiday contact, because that is another common pitfall, especially recently, when I've had parents crying over the phone at the airport because they can't go on holiday. So in reality, what that means is you can pick them up from school, communicate with the school, but you can be a part of their life. You can decide on emergency treatment, say, if the other one's not available. And it's not just fathers, it can be stepmothers who might be able to have parental responsibility. The case that I dealt with in the Court of Appeal, we got the stepmother to have, it was ordered that the stepmother has parental responsibility because she was actually looking after the child more than the father, who was my client. She was there being virtually like a nanny. She needed to have parental responsibility. Father was always abroad. She had to be there to make those decisions, so it was granted under those circumstances. Again, looking at what was in the interests of that child and looking at the welfare checklist. So parental responsibility is key. If you know anyone who has not been able to exercise their rights, let me know, because it's a massive bugbear with me. And it's usually, I'm sorry, but it's usually women who are stopping it being exercised in practice. Next one, school applications. At this time of year, I think it's the cut-off point or the appeal time where people can actually try and get into the preferred school that they wanted their child to go to. And I've done several school applications. They're extremely difficult, but I like a challenge. And there's, again, unfortunately, it's usually mother who says, I've already made the decision, don't worry, they're going to X school. Dad's like, well, why? Because the school down the road, it might not have a very good Ofsted report, but actually it'll be better for the child because he wants to do business or something, and it's a business orientated school. So you've got to take several things into account here. Each parent or anyone with parental responsibility has to be involved. If you're not involved in it, there's nothing to stop you going to the court and asking for an order, either a prohibited steps order preventing that child from going to that school, or more commonly, a specific issue order is what I apply for, saying, I want this child to go to X school and these are the reasons why. Now, catchment areas are common mistakes with those. You've got to think about where the child's living. So if there's a shared care living arrangement in place and the child is known as living at 2 addresses, then it's up for grabs. It's either the catchment area at mum's address or the catchment area for dad's address. If you can't decide, the court will. Again, we look at all the circumstances, but start early. These applications take a long time. They need a lot of evidence. You need to go to the 3 schools in the area, all 3 of you, mum, dad and child, and do a proper evaluation of all of the schools. So you need to establish exactly what is right for the child in accordance with the welfare checklist. As I said earlier, it is not all about Ofsted. Obviously, if a school's class is outstanding, that's important. But if a child, a 10-year-old, has an aptitude for business, and believe it or not, these days they're so intelligent. I've had some children at court applications where they are thinking about business. They know exactly what they want, and we can prove it. A school specialising in business is far more important to them, even though it might be just a very good school or good, be far more important to them than an outstanding one who just does drama. So you've got to think about the children themselves. Arbitration is something which I would say is probably the better course of action rather than taking it to court. Family arbitration is just, well, it started a couple of years ago, but people are really talking about it now. Unfortunately, both parties have to agree to mediation, to arbitration taking place. If you don't, you can't go, because when you are signing up to arbitration, you are saying, yes, stranger, you can make the decision and that's it. So it's like more of a formal mediation. But once you're in, there's no going back. But they decide on minor issues mostly, and that's why school application is really good.
What is that? Is it where a third party makes a decision?
Yeah, they're like a judge. They're usually barristers or solicitors, and you'll basically have an informal hearing. It's more flexible than a court process. It's extremely quick, which is brilliant for school applications, and it's cheaper. Again, which is brilliant for child cases because most of the time you've got children to pay for and we all know how expensive they are. So it's a far better process. It's going to get busier though because it's just started now, so we can enjoy the freedom that it brings. But like everything, I'm sure it will change in time. But I think arbitration is probably the best for this type of application. But always think about the child is what everyone should be doing, but unfortunately you forget when you're a parent and you're at loggerheads with the other parents. Holiday contact is key. I've done a blog or two on this on our website because this is the time where if you haven't booked holiday, you're going to be doing it shortly. And we're all looking forward to the summer holidays already, as sad as that sounds, but beware, because does the other person know that you're going, where you're going, and when you're coming back? I've also had it known where a week before, mother will actually really annoyingly say, actually, I don't want you to go anymore, and everything's paid for. So whatever you agree, please try and put it in writing. I know that sounds tedious, but there's always a bitch in the family, and I would hate for one of your friends or anyone that you know to be a victim of that. Agreed at the start of every school year is what I always recommend. Tedious, I know, but it can really cut out a lot of aggro. So you get to September, you're looking at the whole of the calendar year, you've got your dates through for your term dates, and you think, right, just as parents, ignore the children for now, get them out of the room. Just as parents, if you can possibly spend 10 minutes together around a coffee table, it would be nice to be able to discuss what's going on at Christmas, who's having them for the half term, are you taking them away during the summer holidays, and try and split the contact equally if you can, because it's far nicer. I know annual leave can be a torment, but if you can get the annual leave from work or childcare, take the opportunity to, because I really would never advise any clients to refuse contact. So get the calendars, agree on the dates, get it in writing, and obviously get their permission and have arrangements in place to collect the child's passports well in advance of when you go, because we'll always find there's a call at some point in June, July or August where they're having difficulty collecting the passport, or they've just remembered they didn't get written consent from the mother to take them to Disneyland, Florida. They're now at the airport and border control or whatever are asking where the consent is from mum. I've had that and it's horrible, because I've had to speak to them and say, we've got this agreement in place, this is what it says, but she hasn't brought the order and I'm having to email it through to people. And I've also had it when they can't go away on holiday. And telling a client that there's nothing we can do is awful.
How do they know?
What do you mean, how do who know?
Well, how would you order control know
Right.
it's an order?
Well, I would always say to a client, keep a copy, have an emailed copy and a hard copy.
But if, like me, I mean, my kids are too old now, but they've both got my surname. So if I was taking one of the kids on holiday at, say, 15,
Right.
how would border control know that I was actually split from my wife?
I see what your point is. They probably won't know, but what they will also say is, if they're really young, or even if they're 15, they'll say, does the mother know? Where is the mother? What's the agreement? They are usually quite hot on it now and saying, why are you going on holiday basically on your own with them? And you have to explain, this is the situation, we've separated. Or mums will say, I'm taking my children on my own. I've changed my name because I've divorced. Here's my change of name deed. Here's my decree absolute to say we're divorced. And obviously you know that I'm parents, here's the birth certificate. And some people go and give them all the documents. And I know that sounds very full on, but it saves a headache. And same as fathers, you have to do more. You have to prove that you are the father, you're on their birth certificates, etc. And get a letter or a text or something to say, look, they've given me consent to take them away. But give them details so that parents are more likely to agree with you going away with them if they know where they're going to be, how long they're going for, and when they're coming back. Flight details. They're only concerned, yes, they'll play on it, but they actually are only concerned, and they do need to know. So keep that, keep all the evidence and communicate with them beforehand. Tell them what you are planning and how long you're taking them for. You cannot take them for over 28 days anyway, but a fortnight abroad. As primary carer, a mother for less than 28 days is fine, but a father, no. If in doubt, get consent. Even if you didn't need it, I would always say communicate. It's vital when you're bringing up children. If in doubt, just tell the other person. Right. Grandparents, touched on this earlier. They are increasingly making more applications at court because they're finding that, unfortunately, after a separation, they're not seeing little Tommy as much as they used to. And it might only be a few times a year, and that's simply not right. They might have done all, I don't know, collecting them from school, or they might have seen them on weekends to do something specific. The only problem is that you've got a lot to prove at the courts because you're not their parent. So, if you are a guardian, you're absolutely fine, but usually they have to have been living with you for over 3 years in order for you to just be able to make an application without asking for permission. The courts rarely ask you for permission to make an application. If you're a mum or a dad, you don't need to ask for permission. If you're a grandparent who's just been seeing them once or twice a month or whatever, and they haven't been living with you for over 3 years in the last 5, then you will have to ask for permission. And basically they want to know, is it worthwhile deciding this? Do you have an impact on this child's life? Or are you wasting court time? Is basically the crude answer of why they want that. So if it doesn't apply, they have to consider the welfare checklist, but also the nature of the application and the applicant's connection with the child. Did you have an impact on their life? Basically, what's important for that child? Would disrupting that contact with grandparents be really detrimental to the child? And although you might think these applications are rare, they're not, because grandparents these days, some of them get a bee in their bonnet, and I don't blame them if they're being cut out, and it's important to the child for the contacts to continue, because the courts will always want to preserve the status quo. So if there's any change in what the child's used to, especially at a young age, that's got to be minimised. And lastly, the court will also consider whether the application is frivolous, vexatious, or otherwise an abuse of the process of the court, which is, well, like I said earlier, if you're wasting court's time, it will be pretty clear from the outset.
2 minutes.
Okay. Change of child's surname and religion, again, a common pitfall. I touched on this earlier on. Basically, you can't do it without the other person's consent. If you've got parental responsibility, you both have to decide on the change of surname, any change of school and change of religion. I was in the High Court about 6 months ago on a case dealing with pretty much all of these. We had a woman who wanted to circumcise the child without mother's consent, change the religion. There was also possibility of a relocation and a change of surname.
The full works.
Yeah, new partner, and they wanted to change the child's life, basically. Dad was obviously kicking off about this. We made emergency applications, we had undertakings from her not to do anything. It was really serious. In the end, she thought, it's not worth the aggro, I'm not going to do it. And after having an order from the court saying that she couldn't, as far as I'm aware, touch wood, she hasn't done it, otherwise she would have been in breach of the order. It's a funny situation though, because changing of religion, school, surname, you can get it back. Once a child's been circumcised, that's it. So that's why when we went to the High Court, it had to be dealt with quickly, and we had to make sure we had everything in place. But sometimes there's only so much you can actually do.
What would happen if they did breach it?
We would take them to court. They'll be in breach of the order. They could be held in contempt. They could be fined. It wouldn't help, yeah, we would be asking for that. Obviously disregard of the order, of looking after the child, their welfare, etc. Because the child was torn between 2 religions in that case. It was awful. And 2 very different religions, as I'm sure you can gather. And it was horrible for the child. They didn't know what they were supposed to be doing with who, what meats they could eat with who and when. It was just horrible given their ages. So
I was going to say what age. Was
7. And the school as well were involved, and it was a real, well, I was going to say it was a headache, but it was a lot worse than that. It's just really traumatic, and you wonder what the hell the mum's thinking about. But that's usually what happens, unfortunately. Sometimes the love of their new partner can take over. The child has just been pushed to the side. And this is what we're doing now, Tommy. We've got this religion, get on with it, basically. And it shouldn't be like that. So if there is anything like that, please speak to me. Financial provision, I just want to touch on this quickly. I know I'm conscious of time. Unmarried parents, you don't have any rights to claim against your partner. If you're living together and you fall out, that's it. You get what potentially what might have been agreed out the house, but other than that, you're stuffed basically. But don't forget about Schedule 1 of the Children's Acts. If you've got children and you realise you're not getting enough maintenance, look at this section of the Act. We're dealing with a lot of these claims. Let's look at the other person's assets. Let's see what we need to address the imbalance of the finances and look after the children. What do we need to look after the children each month? So that is very, very important. They're costly applications, I'm not going to lie. They're complex, but we do deal with them, and it makes sure that the children are looked after. Money is basically for them. So periodical payments, transfers of property, lump sums will be made, whatever is necessary to look after that child and meet their needs. Lastly, adoption. I'm doing a lot of adoptions at the moment. I think it's a new year. People are thinking, right, I want to have a real part in this person's life. Stepfathers is the most common thing. Child's got to be living with you for 6 months, though, continuously, in order to be able to be adopted. You might think as a stepfather that's not a problem, but if they're working away abroad quite a lot, it is, as I found out recently, when I have to scratch my head trying to find out how I'm going to get 6 months. So bear that in mind. You need to be living with them for 6 months to have a suitable connection. But it is quite a straightforward process, adoption, with a lovely ending.
Well, can I ask a question? I've got 2 adopted grandchildren, 4 and 5 now. Is there a law that says, is there an age of which a law says that you've got to tell these children that they are adopted?
No, not as far as I know.
No.
I think common sense would be, if they're of an age and understanding and on the approach to being an adult, then it might be appropriate for them to know if they want to know about their heritage.
You know, obviously, as a grandparent, it's something I'm absolutely dreading, you know, to be perfectly honest. And Emma does keepsake boxes and all sorts for them. But there is a yearly thing that does go off into social services. So there is always that little contact there.
I would ask them.
Yeah, and I just wondered, is there an age or is there a law, really?
Every child's different, but I would speak to the social worker who would have a good understanding of that child or the children and know exactly what's the best for them.
Don't have any contact with, because they are fully adopted. We've been to court and everything.
Yeah, that's it. So they are, you know, they would have had parental responsibility in there. It's got a lovely ending, but also you've got to think about the fact that it removes parental responsibility from anybody else. So it's a big thing, but we can help you with that. But definitely liaise with social workers, because with things like that, they are brilliant.
But as far as you know, there's no law?
As far as I'm aware, no.
Okay.
I might be wrong,
Okay.
but that's, yeah, I'll have a look at that. It's quite an interesting question. Thank you for that.
Melanie? I'm going to call it on.
Any questions?
It's very interesting field.
Very interesting.
Very interesting field. I think it could go on quite a long time because it's so interesting.
You put it over.
Oh.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you get involved, as in emotionally involved in some of these cases where
That's a good question.
either with the children because they're quite young, or you get aggrieved on behalf of one of the parents you think is being taken advantage of? Do you find that you get quite involved emotionally?
I try not to, but with this area of law, it's really hard not to. But if I'm at court, the only thing I've got in my mind is my client, and I'll do anything to promote their case. And I get angry with the other side usually. Sometimes you get angry with your client, and I'll show that anger quite clearly to say, look, we're not going to get anywhere unless you change your viewpoint on this. Because you want to help them, but sometimes they're being so stubborn, they're not helping themselves. But anyone who knows me will know that I'll fight tooth and nail for that person. And that's probably because I do care, yeah. But I think you've got to.
Are you able to switch off then at the end of the day when you go home?
Usually, there's a couple of cases where I think, like that one I was saying about the circumcision and the change of religion. You go home and you think to yourself, what is that little boy doing this afternoon?
It over.
Yeah, and thinking, you know, is there anything else that we can do? And that can be a bit of a concern. Also, cases of domestic violence, that really touches a nerve because you think, I don't know if that lady's going to be safe tonight. And that sometimes there's nothing else that you can do.
Problem with
So-
domestic violence is if you keep bloody going back to him, what can you do?
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's the problem, isn't it?
Or,
It's very
Not always
difficult.
the guys.
or
Yeah, very difficult to walk
or
away.
in my case,
But yeah, it's very, very difficult to walk away usually because they feel that they've got no financial resources.
Quite.
I mean, I know a lad who's courts have given the kids and keeps taking them back.
Mm,
Good.
yeah.
Difficult time. Any
There's a
further
reason to start going
questions?
to the gym, Steve. You might have a reason earlier. There you go. You've got it.
Just to defend myself.
Yeah.
Start boxing.
If anyone has any other questions though after this, just speak to me, email me, ring me, whatever.
And if you didn't quite catch anything, get on YouTube in a couple of hours and
Can't be bad. Can't be bad. Thank you very much, Melanie.
Okay. Take some leaflets. Take some leaflets.